Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon to speak about Georgia. A pleasure because for me it's an opportunity also to say a word about Alexander Rondeli that I had the chance to meet 22 years ago, and I still remember what he was telling me during the Rose Revolution. So it means his words were important. Yeah, good guy, as would say someone. My name is Regis. Gente. I'm a French European journalist based in the region since 22 years and covering the post-Soviet area. We'll speak about Georgia this afternoon, and that's important, not because we are in Georgia, but because the war in Ukraine basically started here back in 2008. I think it was the beginning of that war. It is exactly the same narrative which is used by Moscow. This is the same methodology, I would say, to launch the war. And we see still this war fighting with other means, but in Georgia at the moment. So it is important, and we'll try to assess with our panel what is the landscape, the political landscape of Georgia today, especially after that very important event that was the granting of the candidate status by the EU to Georgia last December. And that's very important, and it needs to be assessed because finally all this process was full of paradox, and it's really difficult to assess and to manage, I would say. Full of paradox from the government side. It was obvious that this government didn't want this status. Some say because it is very cautious with Russia, and we can understand that, but we understand also that it goes much beyond just being cautious. It's kind of collaboration, I would say. And exactly 1 year ago in the streets here on Rustaveli, 25,000 at least people were in the street against the law on foreign agents. And what means this law for us, for the topic that we'll speak about today, is that, in June 22, there were 12 priorities set by the Commission and then the Council of the European Council as a conditions for Georgia to get this candidate status. And the number 10 of these priorities was that the civil society should be more involved in the decision making in Georgia. Of course, if you and the law on foreign agents was going exactly against this priority, for example, because of course, if it is written here, foreign agent, it's much more difficult for an organization from the civil society or for a media to be involved in the political decision making in Georgia. It was also a paradox for the opposition in the way there was a big sense in Tbilisi that. Fear that Georgia would miss the train of history, and not to being granted this status while Moldova and Ukraine would go ahead and even would start the negotiation had it happened. And in the meantime, the opposition forces understood also that it was a way to reward the government who didn't want to get this status. And of course, it was a difficult choice for them. And it was also a paradox on the European side, I would say, because there was a big discussions, was big embarrassment until the very last day. As I know, it was not clear if we should give it or not to Georgia and so on. So this is what we'll try to talk about today with our three panelists. I need to put my glasses, of course. We'll start. We have Nona, Mikhelidze, who has a terrible life because she's living in Italy, in Roma. And is a senior fellow at the Istituto Affari Internazionali, and dealing mostly with the EU and the EU neighborhood. And we have as well Kakha Gogolashvili, who is a pillar of the Rondeli Foundation. I think since I'm in this country, you are one of the pillars of the foundation. And Thornike Gordadze, senior fellow at the Jacques Delors Institute. And I should recall also that you were a member of the Georgian government between 2010 and 2012 as someone in charge of the Euro-Atlantic integration. We'll start with Thornike because, as I say, we need to assess what means for Georgia, what means for the the immediate future of Georgia to get the status of candidate with this paradoxal, I say, the decision from the council. And I would love to hear you to explain us what could be the consequences for Georgia.
Regis, you also forgot that I also have a terrible life living in France and in Paris and suffering a lot. That's why I don't consider myself as very legitimate talking about internal situation in Georgia, same as Nona, but Kakha will correct us if we say too much stupid things. To answer your question and to also to respond to the title of this panel, a song came to my head. It's not the Ray Charles version of the song, but Beatles version of the song. I will not mention the title on purpose, but Brussels. So Ukraine and Moldova make Brussels twist and shout, and Georgia is always on Brussels' mind. So a step behind, but still there.
Could have been rainy days in Georgia as well.
Also. So we can continue, you know. This decision, of course, you mentioned the paradoxes of this decision. It's kind of irony of history because the government of Georgia, that is now the less pro-European government in the history of independent Georgia, got the most attention from Europe. But still, it's a good thing, and we should, resoundly agree with this decision and be happy with that, because it's a geopolitical decision. First of all, we know that the European Union makes decisions about enlargement either based on geopolitics. Then also an important component is the public opinion readiness and will, and also very importantly, the transformative decision when the country is ready or complying with the conditions. In the case of Georgia, of course, there was no complying. Georgia was not complying with the conditions. On the contrary, we saw the regression the last years. But geopolitics was there, and mainly and only maybe thanks to Ukraine and Ukraine's resistance to the Russian invasion and the understanding at the end of the threat that Russian Federation represents for Europe and the whole European continent. So geopolitical decision, but Georgia also has the second component is the public opinion, very favorable and very much in favor of European Union. I will not discuss, I think not now, the reasons of this Europhilia. We can discuss it later if you want, but the fact is here. So this decision was made not thanks or because of Georgian government's actions, but against. But I don't agree with you when you said that Georgian government didn't want this status. I think they wanted this status badly, but for wrong reasons maybe. But they wanted it for internal politics. They know that Georgian opinion is very pro-European, and the elections are looming, and Georgia will have a pivotal elections in October this year, and this is very important to show to the electorate, which is 80% or something, in favor of rapprochement and membership in European Union, that the government was following the same direction. At the same time, and I agree that there is the paradox, Georgian government is using the same arguments and same narrative as the Russian government, saying that European Union is decaying, that is threatening our traditions, our religion, etc. So there's a kind of cognitive dissonance, but they found a solution to this cognitive dissonance, saying that we will go in Europe with with our conditions, and also, and I know that the representative of Hungary is here. They found a formidable and magic solution. There is Viktor Orban, and European member states that is following a different path, and we also should follow the same path. By the way, we will join the European Union that likes Viktor Orban, and this is also European Union. So it's deadly important to have maybe marginal, but an ally inside the European Union for them. Getting the candidate status, again, I will underline it many times, it's extremely important and it's extremely good for Georgia, but it also contains a number of risks. And the risks is that the government will use this status to squeeze and to even increase pressure on the truly pro-European forces, and I'm not talking only about the opposition. In Georgia, the opposition is pro-Western. I will not mention the pro-Russian opposition because we'll have too much. We don't have time to mention them, and at the end of the day, they often agree with the government. So, and not only on the opposition, but they will also put pressure on media, on NGOs, etc. And we saw, and this morning, this project on Bill of Law or a project of legislative project about the anti-LGBT, against the anti-LGBT propaganda or pseudo-liberal propaganda is discussed now. This is something also, if European Union wants to safeguard Georgia on the right side of history, not to allow, there are some bad precedents, taking the examples of Serbia and Turkey, two countries that are candidate, Serbia for more than 10 years, Turkey, I even forgot since when Turkey is a candidate. And once these countries got the candidate status, the situation really regressed. And when you give the candidate status to a government that is not genuinely pro-European, and if you're not demanding enough to push on the transformative side of the integration, I mean, on the reforms, it can backfire and it can become really counterproductive. We saw Serbia regressing last few years, and the Turkish integration process is almost dead. And we also saw how these policies influence the public opinion in both countries. In Serbia, more than 50% of the population was pro-Europe and in favor of the membership in the European Union. Now it's 20%. In Turkey, I remember at the beginning of the years 2000, even at the beginning of Erdogan's government, almost 50% of the population of Turkey was in favor of the membership. Now we're very far from this figure. So we should be very careful and never forget that granting the candidate status is one thing, but if there is no insistence and pushing on transformative side reforms, defending media, free media, NGOs, the society, in the long run, even in lesser period of time, this decision can become even dangerous for inside the political situation of the country. Sorry, was I? No? 7 minutes.
Good. Just in few words, but you started to speak about that, but would you tell us what you could advise, I would say, to the European side, what should be done, how we can help the society? Then we'll move with Nona on this issue, but how it could be
avoiding mixed signals, because the whole policy of the Georgian government the last few years was about blurring the lines and saying one thing abroad and saying totally opposite inside of the country. Being very exigent and being very demanding on the elections, because this is now the main political event in this country, and not letting the government to organize these elections in their way, sending as many observers as possible, and of course really trying to insist very much on these 9 conditions that are already there, and not listening to these blurred and mixed signals coming from the government. Oh, we will take your recommendations, but in a way that is good for us. I mean, when they fight against propaganda, they say, okay, we're taking on board European regulations about propaganda, but they are using these same regulations or something similar to that against those who are pro-Europe and pro-West in this country. So, yeah, clearness and very much insisting that there will be no negotiations on membership if the elections are not organized in a correct way and free and fair way.
Thank you very much. In this difficult context, with a government which is obviously reluctant to go west, I would say the role of the civil society and the medias and the parliamentary opposition as well is extremely important and difficult. The margin of maneuver is not that big finally, and we see it decreasing month after month. So how do you look at this, and what could be the role and the possibilities of acting for the civil society, let's say? Nona.
Thank you, Regis. First of all, let me thank the organizers for having me today. Then I would like to follow Thornike's line and somehow focus your attention of the debate that started to unfold in Georgia. Yes, technically, yes. Yeah, started to unfold in Georgia last 2 years. Maybe now it's better? Okay. Yes, now it's better. Okay. So what I was saying that I wanted to invite you to focus your attention on the debate that unfolded in Georgia last 2 years around Georgia's candidate status. Georgia debated long and rightly so on the issue at the governmental, at the oppositional, and at civil society level. 2 years ago, when Ukraine and Moldova secured candidate status, Georgia received only European perspective with set of conditions, and back then the rationale of Brussels was that even if Georgia was far ahead in terms of technical implementation of the association agreement and the CFTA in comparison with Ukraine and Ukraine and Moldova, Georgia was behind in terms of its trajectory towards democracy transition. And indeed, looking at different kind of reports about the democracy index, you will see Georgia from being a front runner in the Eastern Partnership platform now falls behind Ukraine, Moldova, and Armenia, which didn't even sign association agreement and the CFTA. Then you saw all this debate around the candidate status, and before making its decision in December, the EU in autumn said that out of 12 conditions, only 3 have been fulfilled at 100%. And the reforms like the oligarchization, the polarization, judiciary reform were unfulfilled, and it is clear that those are reforms that require political will that does not exist currently in the government. But still, I mean, in front of what has been labeled as geopolitics vis-a-vis democracy choice, the EU decided to grant the country with another set of conditions, and with the hope that this decision would somehow incentivize the government to push on the implementation of the reform. But I'm afraid it will not happen, because the narrative of the government during this year has been that it was an unfair decision 2 years ago when Brussels failed not to grant Georgia with the status. And if we received now, this is because of merit and because of the fact that we have actually already implemented and satisfied all the conditions. So I'm afraid that rather than be an incentive to implement the reform, it will serve more to legitimize the culture of governance of Georgian rule, which is kind of the urbanization of the political system here in Georgia. Now, this at the governmental level. Now, let's shift the focus to the opposition, and especially to the parliamentary opposition, or some part of it. During these years, and especially last year, we saw this kind of approach, the candidate status at any cost, even if it means to turning blind eye on the erosion of democracy. And this was especially clear during the election of the Georgian ombudsman, Levan Yoseliani, his name. Yeah. When it is clear that the opposition, in order somehow to cheat Brussels and somehow to create this facade of democracy in this country, decided somehow to collaborate with the government, and now Georgia has an ombudsman who is allied openly with the government, who has a difficulty to defend sexual minorities, because we know that the government is following this line of conservative, traditional, whatever family values. Now, the situation is even more depressing within the civil society. Because again, civil society, like the Georgian opposition, decided to turn blind eye on the democracy erosion in Georgia, and they has turned the debate, the whole debate around the status as kind of the test on patriotism. So if you criticize Georgia about democracy, this means you don't want a candidate status for the country. And most disheartening was also seeing how some part of a civil society tried to silence their colleagues who tried with an intellectual honesty to say that the status has only sense when it's genuinely is aligned with the democratic credentials and democratic performance in this country. So my curiosity is now, because now we are entering yet another similar path, because by the end of the year you has to decide whether to open the negotiation talks to Georgia or not, and I am curious what will be position of the government. It is clear, but now I am curious what will be the position of the oppositional groups on the debate, and what will be the position of the civil society, whether we have to continue to turn a blind eye on the democracy erosion in Georgia, because of course now opening the negotiation is even more important stamp rather than candidate status for Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you a bit precise, because you seem to re-emphasize the importance of the civil society sector, which is, let's say, under the government influence. And often I'm still French after 22 years, so I still look more at the pro-Western NGOs, which are also very active, and the Georgian ones and sometimes foreign ones. So I feel in what you said that finally also the sector of the NGOs seems to be like vampirized by the government. Is what you mean?
Actually, I don't mean exactly pro-governmental NGOs. I mean pro-Western NGOs who ideally are anti-government, but on these very issues have been co-opted by the government, maybe involuntary, but this is what happened last year when looking at the debate we witnessed on the candidate
And how do you
status.
explain that?
I explained that, I can bring the concrete example, what is happening now about the new law the government is proposing on kind of prohibiting LGBTQ plus propaganda. And we heard today the chairman of the parliament saying that I don't want to find myself in a position like our European leaders in 10 years explaining that the man is man and woman is woman. That's why we are doing this. And the opposition and the civil society started somehow to condemn, of course, this initiative, but the first thing they said, oh, this is a pro-Russian law. I mean, this kind of geopoliticization of the democracy, it harms democracy development in Georgia. I think that the first issue, the first real problem is that this law is the anti-democratic law. And then you can speak about that this is also the Russian law.
I see. Thank you very much. I'm trying to speed up a little bit the process. So I will give the floor to Kakha Gogolashvili, and you will speak mostly about the strengths and the weakness also in Georgia in this context. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So strengths will be shorter, of course. Much more weaknesses, of course, we face. First, I would start just as an introduction, a small introduction, saying that, and this is also the strength of Georgia, that we always believed in European integration. We believed in the process, that European integration is something good that happens in this world, and we should be the part of this. Well, I remember when I went to work to Brussels, to the embassy, that was the late 90s. Deputy Minister asked me before leaving, please establish there or ask if we apply to EU membership, what would be necessary to do and what will be the results. So, of course, when I went to Brussels, some institutions, I was asking this question, and of course I received proper response that it's too early for Georgia, and we could not understand it that it was too early because we were very much keen to join European Union, and we had some naive expectations about this. Of course, we didn't know that you need to transform yourself, and everything. This came a little bit later. Now we understand what that European integration means and how difficult it is to achieve necessary criteria. I think that what Ukraine's war brought to us in this respect, that was, of course, a crucial moment that Russia invaded Ukraine, and strangely, the new perspectives were born for all of us, all three of us. Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia received perspective and candidate statuses already. So the war brought perspective and changed everything. But if we were not ready for this, if Georgia was not so dedicated to this, if Georgian people were not always believing in European integration, we wouldn't have been now candidate country, and the perspective wouldn't be for anybody else, not for us. So I think that our strength is this belief. The strongest strength is, and it's not just strength in this regard, but also about not only in regards of our integration with you, but also democratization and transition and transformation of the country. So the demos in Georgia, those people in Georgia believe in democratic values. This is very important. So we don't need new hegemon as the EU, or would it be NATO or others. Now, maybe somewhere subconsciously we were going to this direction of thinking about new hegemon after dissolution of the Soviet Union. But in reality, we are more and more convinced that we don't need European Union as a hegemon, as somebody who rules us, organizing power, so-called, because we are not able to organize ourselves. So we need European Union, we need NATO, but we need really, because we need friends, we need allies. And allies and friends, they cannot be of different values. You can have partners, you can have commercial partners or something of different values, having different values, but friends can be only people who have the same values. I can tell from my own experience, from my quite long life, not so long, but still long life, I think I had many friends. And we were friends when we had similar values. When we distance each other because we starting sharing a little bit different approaches, different values, and that's more important. So for us, European Union and NATO is a community of states which have same values. But what we do for this, and why this became so important now, because of this geopolitical split, of course, because such a divide in this part of the world, I think that this geopolitical split starting growing since 2015, even not since 2008. That was just beginning, of course, appearance of this. But since 2015, or after 2014 first invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and 2015, Russia started working on this. Russia started working on splitting Europe on the part which belongs to Russia, and the other part, they can do whatever they want. And then real geopolitical competition started in this part of the world. Where this the geopolitical competition actually went to the Black Sea region. Why only Black Sea region? There was Eastern Partnership region, which also includes Belarus, but Belarus was practically already swallowed by Russia. Despite of fights, internal fights, and despite of the existing very strong civil society there, it was decided that Belarus is already swallowed by Russia. What about other parts? So Russia started to attacking Black Sea, of course. And what was the Black Sea for EU? For EU, to my view, Black Sea, since that time exactly, was understood already as an area for future enlargement, European enlargement. Because of association agreements that were signed, because of the process of transformation of the countries like Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, and Armenia somehow, and because of good relations with with Azerbaijan also. So EU was looking to this part of the world already from geopolitical point of view. Enlargement is necessary. Enlargement is necessary for EU as a geopolitical aim. But of course, EU cannot enlarge without transformation of the region. And what was the problem with this? Problem was the transformation which EU used to do in this region, transformational work, which worked until that period. That was done by soft power, by soft means. Economic, socialization, conditionality, different other things that they tried to transform this region. But it was not more possible after 2015 when Russia started using use of force in the region and threat of use of force. So it started using really hard power to confront the European EU soft power. And soft power cannot win against hard power in the open confrontation. So I think that there were two options. What should EU do in order to keep this region really under its influence? So under transformational influence goals to be going on, there was two things. One, that NATO is hardly involved in this region, so NATO starts enlargement or other means, other instruments using in this region to provide region with hard power capacity, or military capacity, for example, building military capacities in these countries, or some other means of to help them to become more resilient. And another thing is enlargement. Enlargement would give to these countries a transformational stimulus, a motivation for transformation and for attaching itself to more and more to you. So this was the momentum and situation why this enlargement really started, why it happens. I think that in EU they finally understood that there is not possible anything, nothing is possible to do further against the Russia's aggressive plans in this region than to involve the enlargement. So maybe I did too long. I will say a few words if it is possible still. So yes, of course, few. So we came to this situation when enlargement is a fact. We embrace this. The people of Georgia embraces, but unfortunately, what is our weakness? That we have no government which understands these goals and this inevitable process that Georgia should become a member of the EU, because this is the will of people. I think that what the government lacks and our ruling party lacks, that this understanding that they serve the people, and as far as people decided they should be part of the European family, you should do everything what you can in order to bring to this family your nation. But this is not the case, unfortunately, and this is very important. Instead, they started balancing between different actors, involving even China here, but balancing with, playing with Russia as well, not criticizing, even not using any sanctions, or even not aligning with EU declarations, statements which are against Russia's aggression towards Ukraine, etc. So this is not a proper policy, I think, and this is the biggest weakness of ourselves. And because of this, these nine steps that EU finally 12 priorities have been transformed in 9 steps, almost totally. This is very difficult to implement when there is no real motivation and real dedication. There is need for choice. People have made this choice. This is our strength, but we have now the government that also is determined and it has made its own choice in order to follow the people's will. This is what I could say at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll jump to the question from the audience. Just 1 year ago, this is the Georgian people who make the history and managed to avoid, to prevent to adopt this law on foreign agents. So it was made by the people, and it was a kind of Yanukovych moment, I think, because we saw exactly the same move in Georgia. I mean, obviously somewhere Russia pushing for Georgia, as they did with Yanukovych, to cut the ties with the West, and part of the population, small part still, it was not that numerous, but probably 25,000 people coming to the street and stopping that, and the government understood immediately. When I look at the 20 last years, for example, of my career, I see that I covered so much kind of velvet revolutions. The last one was in Armenia. It was a wonderful movement, extremely powerful. But we saw that in Georgia, in Ukraine, and so on. How many demonstration rallies against rigged election, as in Belarus 2020, and against also some laws on the price of electricity and so on, as in Yerevan against Electric 2015, or Kazakhstan 2 years ago. It was very impressive movement at the beginning. So I feel that there is a deep wave also, because of the time, because of the population, the young people connected, knowing the world and moving. And I feel sometimes it's one of the key reasons why Putin is doing the war, because he lost the people, and the only things he got now is just to make the war to everyone in the region. I think you wanted to ask the first question, and then.
Thank you very much. Very interesting panel. This question may sound naive because I don't know much about Georgian politics, but since it was argued that the majority of public opinion support EU membership, I wonder how this government is in power, and do you see any change in the upcoming elections? If that's the case, and if this government is against this. I would also like to, correct something about Turkish public opinion on the EU membership. You're right, actually, that was the case for a while because of, public frustration with the slow moving of this process, and also some EU members questioning, even after the accession negotiations, whether Turkey should become a member of the EU, and particularly France, but others as well. So there was a reaction to that, but I know that there are many public opinion polls now showing the opposite, and I just found one by German Marshall Fund, which was conducted in 2023, and it found that there's a high support, about 58% now, among the public, and this goes up to 72% in the age group of 18 to 24. So, I mean, public opinion and the EU membership process is very complex, and it may shift, in an unexpected way. So probably in response to governments' increasing move towards competitive, authoritarianism, there is a response to that, and public opinion is shifting again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brava.
Thank you, Regis. My question goes to Nona Mikhelidze. You are talking about the process of erosion of democracy in Georgia. Well, this is process. So you have to compare different periods with each other. Well, the deterioration of or erosion of democracy is deterioration in the field of human rights and freedoms, freedom of expression, media plurality, political plurality, rule of law, checks and balance systems, and so on. So my question is, can you clarify, do you compare, let's say, the year 2023 with the year 2018, or the year 2023 with the year 2013, or maybe even 2023 with 2007? Thank you.
And Giga, and then we'll take after.
Thank you so much. Two short comments. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Mikhelidze for such a precise description of this paradox situation when the European... I want to thank Nona for this very precise description of the situation when the European integration became a tool in the hands of the government to pressure the opponents and civil society, and anybody who had a different opinion, especially in civil society, became ostracized as a traitor. And then there was a competition within the political parties and civil society who is not a traitor. It's not us, it's somebody else. So it's a very bad precedent what we saw, and we should face that. Second comment on Regis, there is zero evidence that Russia has any problem with candidate status as long as on security front, on NATO enlargement, on economy dependence on Russia, on security situation and political infiltration, they get what they want from GD. So we shouldn't fool ourselves. My question is semi-rhetorical. Again to Nona, but to Thornike and to Mr. Gogolashvili. Should we expect the same paradox now for the next stage of EU integration? That the GD and the regime will be able again to have a country as a hostage and telling everybody, we can behave even worse if you push us. So let's have a competition to go to Brussels and say, we need to get next stage whatever GD does. And how long we will turn a blind eye on overall message of this government, that West wants war in Georgia, that West is a threat to our identity. How can we not notice that and focus on some ticking the box on some reforms when fundamentally we have this picture? Is this the danger that we should await for next year before elections? Thank you.
Just one word, what I was just saying is that they did a lot to prevent it. I feel they changed over the time, but indeed, I agree with that they were, I mean, it's fitting with their agenda and they're okay to get the status. Who wants to start? Nona?
Yeah, several comments from what I heard before, also answering the questions we received. Regarding the public opinion and saying that actually, and it was actually the position of the civil society somehow justifies their position that Georgia deserves the candidate status, that the government doesn't merit the status, but the people, yes, and they quoted a lot the polls who suggest that 85% of Georgian population support the idea of Georgian European integration. But, you know, on the other hand, then we have a government elected with 48% in Georgia. Now, someone would say, it has been falsified, but how much has been falsified? I mean, let's say 45. Still, those are the percentages that in Europe, every single political European party would dream about to reach. So I don't think it is a tenable position to say, you know, the people support the integration and the problem is only within the government. And I don't think that it was the Yanukovych moment back then, because, I mean, the government is smart enough in order to understand what it has to do a step back when it comes to the manifestation. Yanukovych moment means being on the street for 3 months during the winter and being able to change the things, not only just to force the government to retire law. On comparison between years, actually, I didn't make a comparison like Georgian democracy process now and back during Severan's time. I was making comparison democracy process in Georgia and in Ukraine, for example. You know, I'm involved in by Horizon Europe Finance project about the EU's democracy support in the neighborhood, and within this project we made the polls between Moldavians, Ukrainians, and Georgians. The question was, what is for you the absolute value between security and democracy? And the only country responded that the absolute value is democracy. This country is Ukraine. And Ukraine is now at the war. Georgia, which is not the war, and Moldova even, they responded security. And this says a lot about the democracy in Georgia and in Moldova as well. I mean, Ukraine, the population, even if they are in the war, they understand that only through democracy you will come to secure your security. Whether we should expect the same process, I think yes, unfortunately. I mean, now the feeling is that there is not even talks about the status or about the challenges that lay ahead before the next enlargement package due to the late October, in the beginning of November. But I assume that the position of the civil society will be the same. I mean, the decision of a group of civil society, for example, to sign the memorandum of cooperation with the Georgian Dream is the clear example of this kind of the cooptation of the civil society by the government. So I do not really expect from them to have different type of narrative this year, different from last year.
Most of the questions, I will start with your observation and your comment. And yeah, you asked about how come that the government is the people are pro-European and government is not. And then you mentioned opinion poll in Turkey. So we have the beginning of the explanation. If the people are still pro-European, we cannot say the same for the government, but still these people elect the same government. So there's something different. It's not, the explanation comes with the fact that the government has never said that they are against European integration. On the contrary, they say we want European integration, but with our, terms. That's why I said they desperately, catch this example from Hungary and saying, look, this is the Europe we want to be in. And at the same time, yes, as Nona said, 45 or something % of the population votes for this government, and at least half of them think that they are not anti-European, because in the same polls they say that they are for Europe. And this ambiguity the Georgian government purposefully plays should be challenged not only by the civil society, of course, and the opposition, etc. This is fundamental, but also from Brussels and from European capitals. And saying that this is not if the government says, okay, we are implementing some European recommendations, but in fact are doing their own business, and then the European Union have to come and say, no, this is not the case, and this is not what we are asking for. These are not, it should be clear. The clearness is very important. And going back to Giga's question about, yeah, they will probably continue as far as there are no clear signals from the European capitals and from Brussels. Look at Serbia again. Serbia is the biggest recipient of European funds in the Balkans by far. More than, other, I don't know, Montenegro or Albania. They are 90% aligned, their foreign policy 90% aligned on European policies. Serbia is less than 50%. Georgia, it was mentioned recently, it's 34%. especially after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. So if Serbia keeps on getting more European funds and people are still dreaming in Brussels that, yeah, at the end everything will be okay and Serbia will become member of the European Union, why not the Georgians will do the same? So yeah, there's a shared responsibility, I agree with you, but also coming from the West and from the European capitals.
That's a very interesting question regarding this, how 48% support to the government copes with the 85% supporting European integration. If the government is not actually providing everything in order that Georgia joins EU. I think that there are some mathematics also possible to use, that 48% is out of 60% who went to the elections. 40% of people are skeptical and they don't go to elections, 40, 35 sometimes. So I guess that this 40% of people would have voted to join the European Union for European integration than against. And the other thing is that if we come now to 30% support, that Georgian population, 30% of Georgian population maximum supports the government which we have now in rule, then big part or half of these people just they believe that the government also brings the country towards European Union, but by its own way. And after all, the government has strong resources. They have people also have different priorities. Not only the long-term priority about joining European Union, but today's priority is how to feed their families. And many of them depend from this government, so they are serving in different positions, etc. So I think that if we make a research regarding how it fits, it can be absolutely realistic, and it can happen in Turkey as well. I doubt that in Turkey, I believe that 60% at least Turkish people also are for integrating with EU, but the majority of population still elects Erdogan and his government, right? So which is not leading the country towards EU. The same situation, absolutely. So I support this issue. I wanted to say a few words about civil society, just to add a few words. Civil society, I think, became an object of constant attacks from this government. And this is another proof that this government takes advices from somewhere. I don't believe that they have developed such a theoretical framework how to act and what to do in order that eliminate all risks for their power. This comes from already existing patterns in Russia, in other countries, autocratic countries, which consider civil society as the strongest enemy of autocracy. This comes from the Montesquieu and I don't know, Tocqueville, other very important Enlightenment, following Enlightenment the movements people, also maybe some others, who said that without civil society, even in 18th century in Europe, they were believing that without civil society, any autocracy is tending to convert into tyranny. So it will be, tyrants will be born. And what goes on now? Now you can go to modern researchers like Wolfgang Merkel, for example, who says that any liberal democracy or any other type of democracy tends to go towards first electoral autocracy and then full absolute autocracy without civil society. So Russians understood it very well. And they eliminated civil society. I mean, Putin eliminated. So it advises everyone. Advises Hungarian government, advises Serbian or Serbs in Bosnia, or Serbska Krajina and other places. And it advises Kyrgyzstan or other countries to adopt such laws which eliminates civil society. This happens for the moment. And I think that this is very big struggle in order that to conserve or to keep civil society alive in Georgia is a guarantee of democratic transformation, is a guarantee that Georgia, it fluctuates, will not regress towards electoral autocracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to stop. I apologize for the people who had some questions, and because we're a bit short of time. And thank you very much for your attention.